Hello and welcome to Sideways. This week we're checking in on Martin's stubbed toes from the Duffless episode. Martin tells us what he's been learning about in the research that he's been doing, and I try to think of some music which is in keeping with this week's topic. Cults.
I've got anxiety and panic attacks. Are we going now then? Are we up and running?
Yeah. So, before we get started...
Yes. Go on.
I just wanted to ask... how are your toes?
Bruised toes. Well, I'm hoping this episode then goes out chronologically because it's on the previous episode I talked about stubbing my toes badly on the bathroom door. They're still a bit sore a week later, to be honest. Both the toes that I stubbed went very blue and black.
Yeah.
But the pain subsided.
Right, so I've lost interest in your answer.
Thank you. Yeah, I know. You look. Yes.
It was the equivalent of when someone says, "Oh, how are you?"
Yeah.
And you don't want someone to say. You don't want someone to tell you, do you? You want someone just to say, "Oh, I'm fine, thanks." It's just a pleasantry.
Yeah, and I could see your glaze looking in your eye, really. Sort of.
When I said, "How are your toes?" I just wanted you to say they're fine now.
Oh, okay. Well, they weren't, so I'd be lying. Yes. Anyway, how are your toes?
My toes are fine. My toes are good.
All 10 of them.
Yeah. So what are we doing?
What do you want to talk about?
Anything you like.
Anything I like.
Yeah.
Well, I've got loads prepared.
As usual.
As usual.
Yeah.
But there's one particular thing that I want to talk to you about, which is it's cults.
Cults,
not Blue Oyster.
Right.
Not as in don't fear the Reaper. Don't fear the Reaper. That's the only one I know of theirs, really, to be honest.
Yeah, I haven't got any Blue Oyster cult albums.
No.
There's no point me looking for them because, as you know, they won't be in alphabetical order.
And that would annoy the hell out of me, wouldn't it? As it would anyone else. But yeah, I became a little bit intrigued with how religious cults work and the effect that it has on their members.
Are you thinking of any particular cults?
Well, I became intrigued by it really because we had a chap come into groups who had spent his formative years in a Christian fundamentalist cult. So in the UK.
Yeah.
And he around about the age of 21, he managed to we decided it was time for him to leave the cult, and there was all sorts of ramifications on that. And dealing with that led him into a period in his life after that where drink and drugs became a very much a way of dealing with what was going on around him at that point.
So did he feel that he'd been led into drink and drugs as a result of the response to him wanting to leave the cult, or because he found it difficult to deal with life outside?
A bit of both, really. Yeah. It'll come out really as we're going through this episode, but there's various aspects of it which I was quite intrigued by the fact that there's so many similarities of coming out of a cult and coming out of an addiction.
Oh, interesting.
I know the parallels were drawn really. I've looked into it, especially after this chap coming to groups, and he became a very important member of the Aspire to Be charity. We did a lot of work there, and he got himself better, and he moved away. He did come back to a meeting quite recently, so it's great to catch up with him. So his life is very much in order. But I remember him at the time when he was telling us in the groups about what had happened to him in the past, and everyone was sort of fell silent because none of us really knew how this lot worked. And I took the opportunity, and I've since looked on. I've googled it and I've looked on YouTube, and there's three particular cases on YouTube which I liked. You know the old TED Talks and the TEDx Talks.
Yes, we've talked about them before.
We have. I'm a great fan of them. There's some great stuff on there, and I wanted to look into this a little bit more. So when I was preparing this episode, I wanted to take a look at. Or to remind myself what happened to this chap, and looking on YouTube, there's three particular cases I come across. One of the most famous one, I suppose, is Megan Phelps Roper, who hit the headlines. She was part of the Westboro Baptist Church in the USA, which they're
hasn't Louis Theroux's been there?
Yes, he has.
Chatting to them a couple of times.
He has. Her grandfather was set the church up initially, and
he was an interesting character.
Yeah, very much so. But they were notorious for going to to funerals and to anywhere where they could put their signs up and usually very much a bigoted message they were sending across to people that weren't of the correct sexuality, and they thought that they were anything that was against their strict interpretation of the Bible. But so it was her, and there's a lady called Dawn Smith, who was in a cult called the Assembly in the USA, and then there's a girl called Claire Ashman. Now she was in two cults. She went out and left one. And went into
cults?
Yeah, she went into another one, which
Wow.
was I know they were both doomsday cults. But she sort of relapsed, which she used that word. She
Wow.
relapsed and went back into a cult again, which is a weird thing to do after you've escaped one.
So there's something there that she missed about being. Presumably, some of that was about the structure and the certainty, was it?
Yeah, very much so, I think.
Which is similar to addiction, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I mean, the parallels were enormous, really. And it's so when I was preparing the notes for this, I've taken bits from those 3 TEDx talks and the chat that came into groups to get a general feel as to how this works. And everyone that goes through addiction or comes out of one of these cults goes through a deprogramming exercise where we're retraining their thought process. Which is what you get when you go to rehab and when you go into the fellowships and when you go into various groups, peer support groups like the ones that I run.
Actually, when you do pretty much any therapy.
Yes. Yeah, I know. The overlap with your sort of work I thought was enormous, and I'll come on to that in a minute because it was the psychiatric help. Whilst you're in one of these cults, and this came across, this chap was telling me this as well, that any psychiatric help was seen as evil and satanic. Right? So you'd have been first up against them all, people of your ilk, people of your sort.
So I would have been seen as evil and satanic.
I can understand that.
Yeah.
Right there, yeah. But
I've probably been described as many things over the years, but I'm not sure about satanic.
No, I know, but they thought that you have to trust in God's word, basically, and you'd get better through prayer and that sort of thing. And
I did wear a Black Sabbath T-shirt to church once.
Did you?
Famously.
Did you?
Yeah.
Did that go down okay?
With who? God?
Well,
My mum was okay with it, which in some ways is surprising, isn't it?
It is, with knowing your mum, yeah.
She said that God didn't mind what you turned up to church in.
So
I thought, I'll test that out, and I'll wear a Mob Rules T-shirt and see how he likes that.
And you didn't get struck down, did you?
I didn't get struck down, no. It's all okay.
But yes, it's the mental health issues within those sort of confines of a religious cult go untreated, basically. Just like an addiction, whilst you're in addiction, you're not getting treated. You can't get treated, can you? You can't get treated for any emotional distress, etc. You can't get psychotherapeutic help because you need to clear away the substances. You need to clear away the drink and the drugs before that starts to have any impact upon.
Yeah, and you also need to recognise, don't you, in order to recover from anything, you need to recognise that there's something wrong.
Yeah, you do.
And of course, in a cult, any sort of psychotherapeutic intervention would be dismissed, wouldn't it? Because it's not in the interests of the cult for people to see clearly.
No, it isn't. But one of the phrases one of these girls used, which we use all the time in recovery, was that the worst day after leaving the cult was still better than the best day within the cult. So the worst day when we go into sobriety is still better than the best day whilst the addiction is in full flow.
Yeah. So
they used that, and a couple of the girls used that. So it's quite an interesting parallel, I thought. And the chap that came into the group, so he came into recovery after many years of taking drugs and drinking after leaving the cult. He felt that as well. I remember him saying very much the same thing. So it all sort of links in with the sort of research I've done on this.
When he came into the group, when he embarked upon his recovery, did he say what it was that had led him into that at that point? One of the questions that I like to ask people when they come and see me is, why now?
What led him in? Sorry, or leaving the cult, or into recovery?
Entering recovery.
I think that the same as all people with addiction, you get to the point where you've just about had enough, and I think that the financial implications had built up. His health was suffering. His mental health obviously had suffered enormously after leaving the cult,
and within it.
And he felt that at some point he couldn't go on basically like he was abusing himself. It was mainly drugs he was using to escape the reality of what was happening. Because when you leave one of these cults, you're completely ostracised by the people you leave behind. So you've got to when you leave, you have to understand that the family and all your friends and extended family that are around you will not talk to you anymore. They leave you behind. And I remember him telling us about this, and I couldn't imagine the stress that would have brought on for someone. It must be enormous, mustn't it?
Yes, must be. I mean, in a sense, there's another parallel there with addiction, isn't there? Because in recovery, you are encouraged to stay away from the people that you were drinking with or using drugs with or whatever.
Yeah, very much. Any toxic relationship you had in recovery is very much you're encouraged to move away from that. And it's the parallel is quite clear on that, I think. And it's quite strange with this chap that came in, because after leaving, whilst he was in the cult, he was like a young creationist, and he was quite evangelical. So he'd go out on the streets and preach the word, etc. And then he went to university and studied geology. So the scientific it was because the scientific facts were then at complete odds with his religious beliefs or the doctrines that he believed at that time. So again, I think he found that quite weird to come to terms with.
I wonder why he chose geology.
I think there was. I did ask him that, and he because the people within the church weren't that keen.
No, I wonder why
on him going down that route. But I think
kidding.
I got a feeling, and it's a little while ago now, but I got a feeling that was part almost of his own. I think it was part of the process he was going through at that point.
There was something stirring within him, so almost unconsciously. There was something moving him to gird his loins for leaving. Yeah,
I think so. I think he'd started to question it.
Yeah,
and I think that leads us on quite nicely onto another point about. He was saying that mentally you check out a long time before you actually leave the cult, which is a bit like getting ready to give up the drink and the drugs. Yeah, it is. Yeah, you sort of you're sort of getting ready. You know you've got a problem. You know that something at some point has got to be done about it. And you put that off for quite a long time, and I'm sure that leaving...
This is the cycle of change.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, where you can spend a lot of time preparing for change before the change actually happens.
Yes. And the parallel with that is also we come across it a lot where people, when they come back into groups after they've lapsed or relapsed, and we analyse that, it can be up to 2 weeks before they pick up that drink that it's starting to happen. Maybe longer. It's almost a pattern you can see emerging, which is why if we can identify that at an early stage, we do try and help on that, because there's a fairly set pattern, and that can lead then to relapse unless there is some sort of intervention, both or either by themselves or other people helping around them. But I think the feeling of being trapped, both within a cult and within addiction, are very similar as well.
In what sense?
In the sense is that you fear what is going to come next. You fear the change.
Oh, actually, do you mean something we've spoken about before, which is one of the good things about staying in a bad place is at least you know it.
Yeah, very much so.
So tomorrow's going to suck, but at least I'm going to know what it's like.
Yeah.
Whereas if I change, I have no idea what that's going to be like, and it might even be worse.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're substituting what you know for what you don't.
Do you think though? So obviously, I don't know what that's like from the perspective of someone who's been in a cult. But if you're struggling with addiction, do you think anybody remembers what life was like before addiction?
It's quite tricky. It is quite tricky because you can sort of. It's quite difficult to track the steady decline, I suppose, because there isn't one thing that tends to trigger off. It's a whole load of circumstances which can lead to your addiction becoming a problem.
Yeah, the reason I ask the question is because I I can remember having a conversation with another therapist a while ago, and our experience was that people seem to find recovery slightly easier from whatever it is they're recovering from if they can remember a version of themselves that was okay. Whereas if you can't remember a version of yourself that was okay, it becomes very much more difficult to sustain your recovery because of that fear of the unknown. You don't really know what you're going to. It's almost as if you've got to destroy and reinvent yourself, which is terrifying.
It is quite terrifying. I mean, you can look back, and I can never remember a point personally in my life where, drink wasn't an issue or wasn't part of my life. I've got to go back to before I was 15, really, and it's quite a long time ago.
Yeah,
it was at the time when West Ham were quite good, which shows you how long ago it was.
I certainly don't remember that those days.
So it is quite tricky. But the people that come into recovery, everyone changes anyway. You don't go back to what you were before the addiction started. You come out of it a completely different person.
No, you can't go back to what you were. But I just wonder if, in some sense, knowing or being familiar with a version of yourself that was okay gives you some sense of belief that it is possible for you to feel all right about yourself and your life.
Yeah, I suppose that's correct. We can remember with cults, for example. I mean, most people are born into them, so there is no reference point back beyond that.
Yeah.
So they're either sort of born into it, or they're manipulated into it by their peers, or which again is a bit like addiction. Sometimes the people you mix with can have a big influence upon your addiction sparking up at some point. So I think that again, when this chap was talking in group, when he first introduced himself, he was talking about playing catch up with society after leaving the cult.
Oh, something you've spoken about.
Very much so, and again that rung true. It rings true now because playing catch up with society. As you know, we've spoken about my lost sort of decades in the past, and a lot of people feel the same. It is you're on hold while your addiction's in full flow. You flatline, you emotionally don't grow, and suddenly you come back into society. And he found that with leaving the cult, because there's an awful lot to catch up on that he'd been protected from, and on top of that, he had to deal with recovery as well at a later stage. Which I had enormous respect for the guy, I really did, and he was a very interesting chap, very intelligent guy, and it was to see him recover was a real joy.
Did he, when he came out in the cult, did he go around the charity shops finding CDs from bands that he'd missed out on for a decade?
I don't know. I mean, I found it a great resource, the charity shops, to do exactly that. Yeah. He didn't seem to be as. I think he would have had to go back because he didn't really have a gap to fill in. He had to sort of rebuild from the start. He had to go through this deprogramming situation where he had to unlearn what had been taught to him. So his behaviour and his thought process, etc. And it took a long time to see any progress on that.
He would steer clear of the Cliff Richard CDs, I imagine.
I think he would. I mean, any mention of that. I remember someone in one of the groups. As a joke, had said, like, coming to these groups or going to the fellowships, a bit like going into a cult, and he flew almost into a rage. This is definitely not anything like a cult. Almost an insult to call it that because of the severity of what had happened to him within the cult. There's things I won't go into on here, but some nasty things happen within that, and it is almost like cheapening it to a certain extent as far as he was concerned.
Yeah, because it's abusive, isn't it?
Yeah, very much so, and I think again this chap was. I remember him telling us about how the cult filled any voids in his life, and when he come out of that, he needed to fill it with something else, and drink and drugs come into it, and filled that void nicely for some time.
So when he eventually recovered,
yes,
when he had gone to a point in his recovery where there was some certainty that he could sustain it. What did he eventually fill his life with? Because he had the cult and then he had drink and drugs.
He did.
How did he? Because that's one of the other things that we've spoken about in the past, isn't it?
Yeah.
That when you've got something destructive in your life and you take it out, it leaves a hole that you have to put something else in.
You do. I mean, in his case, I mean, he struggled. He went back to work and he did various different bits, did various different jobs, etc. And he was having trouble remaining sober. And he had, a couple of little lapses and this sort of thing. But then he did make a holistic choice, if you like, where he moved away. He's now got a job where he does he's like a handyman at a school, but up in Yorkshire. Mm-hmm. And he seems to be a completely different person, totally relaxed, and he made the changes on a wholesale basis. Mm. And so he feels that now with things that don't carry the levels of stress that would have done in the jobs that he'd started to go into when he first left the cult.
Yeah.
And he's settled down.
Cleaning graffiti off walls.
Yeah. It's all sorts of things, but he's a different person when you see him now, and so it's a joy. It's a joy to see.
Nice.
I think it is. I mean, he was telling us also about, and he introduced the idea. Again, was something I looked at later, that he was getting treated for religious trauma syndrome. Now we talked about RTS. We talked about syndromes in the past, haven't we?
Yeah.
And this was one, and it struck me as as a label, which again we've discussed in the past, whether they're good or they're bad, etc. But some of the symptoms, because he was going through some of the symptoms of religious trauma syndrome, and again it sounded very much to me like how addiction treats us.
Right.
So
in what sense?
In what sort of on an emotional level, he said when he came out, he was he suffered great anxiety and depression, grief.
Yeah,
was a big thing. It was it's sort of bereavement, really. You're leaving everything you know behind.
Yeah.
Loneliness, he felt much, which again you find all this in active addiction. Difficulty in finding pleasure was one which came up. Actually, it wasn't from him, but it was on one of the TED talks I was talking.
Do you think that in the early stages of recovery is about a kind of feeling of pointlessness of life?
Yeah, very much so.
Because actually, even though life may have been pretty miserable, at least it had a point, and that was, when can I have another drink?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And then suddenly that's taken away from you, and you've got to find a new sense of purpose, haven't you?
You've got to say, there's a loss of meaning. Yeah, you're absolutely right in life. But he had trouble with. He was telling me, and I find this also with people that come to groups when they come out of prison or an extended stay in rehab, where they have difficulty with decision making.
Yeah, they haven't had to make any, have they?
They haven't had to make any, and they get sort of confused thinking. Mm-hmm. So that takes a while. Again, he was telling us that the deprogramming helped with that sort of thing. But I think the negative beliefs about their own self-worth is a massive thing as well, which again is so similar to addiction. But another thing that intrigued me really was when he was talking about the loss of a social network, because within a cult you find that everything, you're spending each and every day with people from the church, from the minute you wake up to the moment you go to bed. And so you imagine walking away from that and leaving that behind, and you're going to feel pretty rudderless, aren't you?
Yeah. So you've got no structure in your day. None of the people that you are used to having around you.
No, you're not. I know a great thing in recovery is obviously is about connection rather than isolation. So I think you found coming into the peer support groups of great help, massive help. Obviously, he wouldn't go to the fellowships because of the potential religious connotations of that and the higher power, which
Feel himself in another cult.
He turned his back on that. But that was quite tricky for him. And he did mention as well about this sense of social awkwardness, because I can imagine coming away from that situation out into the big bad world, how difficult that would be. And I can fully understand why drink and drugs became a real friend at that point.
Yeah, because you've got no sense of kind of normal, for want of a better word, social cues, have you? Because all of your life has been within that small bubble.
Yeah. You do, and I think finally he found himself a little bit of a fish out of water, really, and a sort of an unfamiliarity with the secular world.
Yeah,
because it'd been in this sort of in this the cult where you had this this authoritarianism coupled with toxic theology,
Do you
which
think
he had great trouble with coming to terms with at a later stage.
Yeah. Did he give any indication as to whether he'd ever felt that it had been the wrong decision to have come out? Did he ever regret it?
No, he didn't regret it, but I think that it's probably something that it'd taken a long time to come to that decision to leave. And I think that it would have been constantly on his mind initially, was that the right decision? Because it must have been really, really tricky.
Yeah, really tough to leave, and then even tougher once he had.
Yeah, very much so. Very much
Which actually is another similarity of addiction.
Very much so, yeah. It sort of all works around on itself, and it was when researching this on top of what I already knew about the situation that I found the links even stronger. But I enjoyed doing the research for this one because I thought that I learned a lot about the thought process behind how cults work, and how leaving them can leave people in almost like a PTSD situation.
Yeah, definitely.
So the mental health. I
wouldn't be surprised if he did have PTSD.
It's. I found it fascinating, and I still do. But that's pretty much all I wanted to say on that.
So safe to say that unlikely you're going to join a cult anytime soon.
It's not going to happen. No. I think the leaving was way too traumatic. It's probably a bit like having a girlfriend which or as a girl that you really like to go out with, but it would cause an awful lot of problems.
Yeah, well, that doesn't stop most people.
No, it doesn't. No, yeah. Probably not. Probably a bad analogy.
That's very interesting. That's probably the most interesting you've been for some time.
Well, yes, because I bothered to put some effort in on this one, didn't I? Which is most unlike me. It's not going to happen again. Don't you worry about that.
Very good.
But I'll find something else equally good, I'm sure.
Well, I look forward to it.
Thank you. Yeah.
So I'll see you next week.
Yeah, look forward to it, mate.
Okay.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.
Sideways was created by Graham Landy and Martin Pankhurst. If you want to read more about our work, visit grahamlandywellbeing.co.uk/sideways-podcast. You can follow us on Twitter, and you can email us with any questions or to let us know what you think of the show. And finally, we want to thank you for listening and ask that if you've enjoyed what you've heard, that you spread the word. And we'll see you next week.
Not through the wind or the sun or the rain, we can be like they are. Come on, baby, don't fear the reaper. Baby, take my hand. Don't fear the reaper, we'll be able to fly. Don't fear the reaper, baby, I'm your